Hey everyone. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think about the characters and their choices. Enjoy the story. I don't remember much from that night, but the video Mark showed me this morning made everything flood back in an instant. The way my heart sank when I saw it. How everything played out so differently in my head before I saw the truth. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. It was supposed to be a fun night. Mark and I had been married for 6 years, and we thought it was a good idea to throw a little party for our anniversary. We rented out this cute little place near the beach. Not too fancy, but enough to make it feel like a celebration. The usual suspects were there: our friends, some coworkers, and a few people I hadn't seen in a while, like James. James? I knew him from college. We had a history, nothing serious, but always that kind of lingering chemistry that neither of us ever acted on. He was a bit older than me, and I'd always admired his confidence and wit. He was charming, always the life of the party. The kind of guy who knew exactly what to say to make everyone laugh. The kind of guy who, for some reason, always made me feel alive. That night, Mark and I were fine, I thought. At least, we were putting on the appearance of being fine. We had a few drinks, mingled with everyone, and I tried to focus on him. He looked good, as always, but there was this gap I couldn't ignore anymore. We'd stopped being the couple that laughed at silly things, that shared inside jokes. It felt more like we were roommates sometimes, just going through the motions, and I hated that feeling, but I didn't know what to do about it. James caught my eye from across the room more than once. He was standing with Emily, making everyone laugh, but his gaze would wander over to me every now and then. I didn't know if it was the alcohol or the fact that we were both just so comfortable with each other, but I felt a spark I hadn't felt in years. I kept telling myself it was nothing, that I was just being stupid. But the more I looked at him, the more I felt drawn to him. I knew what that look meant. At some point, Mark got pulled into a conversation with some of his colleagues. I didn't think much of it. He was a lawyer, and those talks usually dragged on. So, I wandered away, more out of habit than anything else. I ended up next to James, who smiled when he saw me. "You look beautiful tonight, Kat," he said, his voice low and smooth. I shrugged it off, trying to sound casual. "Thanks, you're not so bad yourself." We laughed, and for a moment, I felt like I was 20 again. The world felt light. I wasn't thinking about anything. Just enjoying the moment. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was just the fact that, for once, I felt seen. Mark and I had stopped looking at each other like that a long time ago. We talked for a while, and then James did something unexpected. He stepped closer to me, just a little too close. I felt his breath against my ear, and my heart skipped a beat. It was an innocent gesture, or at least I tried to convince myself it was. But his hand brushed against mine, and I felt a charge shoot up my arm. It was one of those moments where you know you should pull away but you don't. Instead, I stayed, frozen. "What do you say we get some air?" James said, his voice soft, but with an edge of something I couldn't quite place. I glanced over at Mark, but he was deep in conversation, not even looking our way. And for some reason, I thought to myself, why not? It was just a few minutes. Just to clear my head, we stepped out onto the balcony. The air was cool, and the city lights flickered in the distance. I could feel the tension between us now. It was like everything had slowed down, and in that moment, I couldn't remember why I had fought this for so long. James moved a little closer, and I didn't pull away. I didn't want to. I could feel his eyes on me. It was as if I was the only one in the room, or the world, or whatever space we were in. I wasn't sure what I was doing. Maybe I wasn't even thinking. My mind was foggy from the wine, but there was a clear, undeniable pull. And then, it happened. He kissed me. I didn't even hesitate, I kissed him back. And it felt good. Too good. Like I had been starving for this kind of attention, and it was filling an emptiness I didn't even know was there. His lips were soft but demanding, and I let myself get lost in it. It was only when he pulled back that I realized what had just happened. And the first thing I felt was guilt. Deep, soul-crushing guilt. This wasn't me. This wasn't who I was. I was married. I loved Mark. But then why did I feel this pull, this urge to be close to someone else? We didn't say much after that. James gave me a look, one of those looks that didn't need words. And I knew that whatever happened next was on me. I was the one who let this happen. I was the one who made the decision. And even though I hated myself for it, I didn't stop it. Instead, I pulled him back in for another kiss, deeper this time. I couldn't even remember how we got to the guest room, or if we even spoke. It was like everything went blurry after that. I didn't care. For once, I wasn't thinking about the responsibilities, the guilt, or the life I had built. I just wanted to feel something different. We didn't sleep together that night. But everything else, it was like I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't stop what had already started. The next few hours were a blur. All I remember was that, when we went back to the party, everything felt different, like I was wearing a mask, pretending everything was normal, pretending that nothing had happened. And Mark, he never noticed. I don't think he ever will. That's what I told myself, at least. But I knew that what I had just done was the beginning of something I couldn't undo. And when I woke up this morning and saw that video, I realized how much I had lied to myself. I don't know what's worse, the guilt or the fear of what happens next. The next few days after that night felt like I was walking in a haze. Everything around me seemed muffled, as if I was looking at my life from the outside. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something huge had shifted, but I didn't know what to do about it. What I did know was that I couldn't pretend it never happened. No matter how much I wanted to push it out of my mind, I couldn't. Mark was oblivious, of course. He was so wrapped up in his work, his cases, the things that kept him busy during the day. He'd always been like that. Dedicated, driven. But lately, I couldn't help but feel that he was distant in other ways too. Maybe he had noticed that we weren't as close as we used to be, or maybe he was just too tired to care. Either way, he never brought it up, and neither did I. But James. James kept calling, texting. At first, I tried to keep my distance. I'd tell myself that it was just a fleeting moment, something that happened when I was vulnerable. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I couldn't stop thinking about how he made me feel in a way that I hadn't felt in years. Alive. Sin. Wanted. It was pathetic, I know. I told myself that I needed to stop, that I had a husband who loved me, who I should be loyal to. But there was this craving inside me. A craving for something more, for something exciting. And James was offering it, in a way that Mark hadn't in so long. It started with texts, casual, harmless at first. How's the week going? Or, missed you at the party. Nothing that screamed fair. But the tone was unmistakable. I couldn't deny that it made me feel good. I responded just as casually, but inside, I knew I was playing a dangerous game. I told myself it would stop. That it was just a passing phase, that I'd be better. But when James suggested we meet up for lunch one afternoon, I couldn't resist. I found myself agreeing before I even had time to think about it. We met at this quiet little cafe, a place we used to go back in college. It was like no time had passed at all. As soon as we sat down, everything felt easy, comfortable. We laughed, we talked, and I felt that same spark. That thing that had been missing for so long. I didn't want to admit it, but I was enjoying myself. I was enjoying the attention. The thrill of being with someone who made me feel special in a way that Mark no longer did. And when James leaned in close to kiss me after lunch, I didn't hesitate. I kissed him back, just like I had before. It wasn't a moment of weakness anymore. It was a decision. A choice I was making. And that's what scared me the most. But the thing was, I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to face the reality that I was betraying my husband. That I was lying to the person I had promised to love and honor for the rest of my life. But I couldn't stop. I was drowning in it, in him, in the excitement. I told myself that it was just temporary, that I would stop before it went too far. But deep down, I knew I was already in too deep. I tried to hide it from Mark. I'd smile, act like everything was fine, and pretend nothing had changed. But how could it not? How could I look at him and not feel like a fraud? Every time I kissed him, I felt like I was betraying him. But every time I kissed James, I felt like I was finally being honest with myself. I was finally feeling something real. At least, that's what I told myself. But I was also terrified. Terrified of the truth. Terrified of getting caught. I couldn't tell Mark. I couldn't hurt him like that. He didn't deserve it. I was just confused. And weak. And afraid. I kept telling myself that I was still in control, that I could stop at any time, but I knew that wasn't true. I wasn't in control. James was in my head. And there was no going back now. Then, one evening, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard Mark talking to someone on the phone in the other room. He was talking about work, as usual. I could hear his voice muffled, but there was something about the way he sounded that made me pause. He seemed distant. He seemed tired, like he was giving a piece of himself to someone who wasn't me. And it hit me all at once. This was the same feeling I had when I realized I was slipping away from him. I had been feeling ignored for so long, and now I was the one doing it to him. The guilt hit me like a ton of bricks. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, as everything I had done replayed in my mind. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to come clean and beg for forgiveness. But the fear of losing everything, the fear of what he would say, it kept me silent. And then there was James, always there, always ready to fill the emptiness I felt inside. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the answer either. James wasn't the solution to my problems. He was just a distraction, and I wasn't being fair to anyone, least of all myself. A few more weeks passed like this, with me walking on a tightrope. On one side was Mark, the man I loved and who deserved my honesty. On the other was James, the man who made me feel alive again, but who I knew could never give me what I truly needed. I was stuck in the middle, too scared to move forward, and too ashamed to go back. But then everything changed. It was a quiet Sunday morning when it all came crashing down. I woke up to find Mark already sitting at the kitchen table, looking at his phone. His face was unreadable, a slight frown tugging at the corners of his lips. He didn't even acknowledge me at first, which was unusual. Normally, he would greet me with a smile or at least ask how I slept. But today, something was different. "Hey," I said softly, trying to keep my voice casual, even though my heart was racing. "How's your morning going?" Mark didn't respond immediately. Instead, he tapped the screen of his phone one last time, then set it down on the table with a quiet click. His eyes met mine, and I saw it, the coldness in them. The emptiness. The same emptiness I'd been feeling for months. But this was different. This was the kind of emptiness that came with a deep hurt, a betrayal. "Catherine." He started, his voice steady but laced with something I couldn't quite identify. "I need you to explain something to me." I swallowed hard, the weight of what was coming crashing down on me like a wave. My stomach tightened. I knew exactly where this was headed. "What do you mean?" I said, my voice betraying me. I tried to sound confident, but the words came out shakier than I intended. I stepped closer to him, trying to act normal, to keep the facade up, but it felt like everything was unraveling in front of me. Mark didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pushed the phone across the table toward me. My heart skipped a beat. On the screen was a video, one I recognized instantly. It was from that night, the night at the party, the night that felt so innocent in my mind, but was now being dragged out into the light for me to face. I stared at the video, and my heart sank. There I was, laughing with James, and then kissing him. My stomach twisted painfully as the memory flooded back, that moment when I thought no one was watching. But someone was. Emily, of course. She was the one who had recorded it. Mark didn't say anything for a moment, but his eyes never left mine. The silence between us was suffocating. I could feel the pressure of his gaze, like he was waiting for me to say something. Anything. But what could I say? How could I explain this? How could I explain the way James made me feel when I hadn't felt anything like that in years? The way I had fallen into it, letting it happen, thinking it was harmless, thinking it wouldn't matter. But it mattered. It mattered so much. "Tell me it's not what it looks like," Mark said, his voice breaking slightly. His usually calm demeanor was crumbling, and it made my chest tighten with guilt. "Tell me this isn't happening. Tell me you didn't betray me." The words hit me harder than any slap ever could. Betrayal. It was all so clear now, all the little cracks in our marriage that I had ignored. The fact that I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross, and now Mark had seen it, and there was no denying it anymore. I don't know what to say," I whispered, my voice barely above a whisper. I could feel the tears welling up, but I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to look weak, to look like I didn't have control over myself. But I didn't have control anymore. I hadn't for a long time. Mark's face twisted with frustration, anger, and something else. Something I couldn't quite place, but it wasn't just anger. It was the kind of pain that comes when someone you trust betrays you in the most intimate way. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely audible now. "Why would you do this to me? After everything. After all we've been through together." I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. I couldn't find the right words to explain how I had gotten to this point, how I had let myself fall into this mess. I couldn't explain the reasons behind it, because deep down, I knew they weren't enough. They were just excuses. And that was the hardest part. No matter what I said, no matter how I tried to justify my actions, it wasn't going to change what had happened. "I don't know," I finally said, my voice shaky. I don't know what I was thinking, Mark. I wasn't happy. Not with myself, not with us. And then James, he made me feel seen. He made me feel like I was still me. Like I was still someone worth noticing. I looked down at my hands, not able to meet his eyes anymore. I'm sorry. I know it's not an excuse, but I was just so lost. Mark's expression softened for a moment, as if my words had struck a chord with him. But then the anger returned, stronger than before. So you just do this. You betray me like this because you were lost. What about us, Catherine? What about the vows we made? What about the love we had? He stood up, pacing now, his hands running through his hair in frustration. I gave you everything. And this is what you do. I felt my chest tighten. He was right. He had given me everything, and I had thrown it all away. All the love, the trust, the life we had built together. I had destroyed it with one reckless choice. I never meant to hurt you, I said, tears finally spilling over. I didn't. I was trying to find something I didn't even know I was missing. But I see now how selfish it was. How wrong it was. I never should have done this to you. Mark was silent for a long time, the anger still simmering beneath the surface, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. The deep, unbearable hurt that only betrayal can cause. And in that moment, I knew that nothing I could say would take away the damage I had done. Catherine. Mark finally said, his voice low and tired. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to look at you the same way anymore. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. Those words felt like a knife in my chest. The idea that Mark might never forgive me. It was too much to bear. But the truth was, I had broken something that couldn't be fixed. And I didn't know if there was any way back from it. The following days after that moment felt like a blur. I don't remember much about them, only that everything I thought I knew about my life seemed to shatter. The silence between Mark and me was suffocating, like there was this thick wall between us that neither of us knew how to break down. Every time I tried to speak, I was met with a silence so loud it felt like a slap. The love I once felt for him was still there, but it was overshadowed by guilt and shame, like a heavy weight that I couldn't shake. Mark barely spoke to me after the confrontation. When he did, it was short, clipped sentences, questions, accusations, but nothing that sounded like the man I had married. He couldn't look me in the eyes for more than a few seconds. And I couldn't look at him either. Not because I didn't want to, but because every time I did, I saw the hurt in his eyes, and it was more than I could bear. We tried to talk a few times, but the words were always tangled in emotions too raw to untangle. He asked me why I hadn't come to him, why I hadn't told him I was unhappy, why I hadn't tried to fix things before everything exploded. And I had no answers. I didn't have an explanation that could make it better, because deep down, I knew it wasn't just about the affair. It was about years of growing apart. Years of ignoring the things that weren't working. Of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I should have known. Mark said one night, as we sat in the living room, the air between us thick with unsaid words. I should have known something was off. I didn't want to see it. I kept telling myself that you were fine, that we were fine. But we weren't, were we? I wanted to say something. To tell him that it wasn't just his fault, that I wasn't blaming him. But the words didn't come. Instead, I just nodded, feeling the ache in my chest grow. No, we weren't. I wasn't fine. And I didn't know how to fix it. Mark looked at me, his expression a mixture of sadness and disbelief. How long had you been feeling like this? He asked quietly. I had to swallow hard before I could answer. A long time, Mark. Longer than I care to admit. It wasn't just that I had been unhappy. It was that I had ignored it for so long. I had convinced myself that things would get better if I just tried harder, if I just kept pretending that everything was okay. But nothing had changed. And instead of facing the issues, I had run away. I had found someone else to fill the gap, to make me feel something, anything, other than the suffocating loneliness I had been feeling for so long. I didn't want to hurt you, I said, my voice breaking. I never meant for this to happen. But I was lost, Mark. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to fix what was broken between us. Mark stood up abruptly, running a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. You think that's an excuse? His voice was low, almost a growl. You think that because you were lost, that makes it okay? You think that makes it okay to throw everything away? No, I said quickly, shaking my head. No, it doesn't make it okay, I know that. I don't know why I did it. I don't even recognize myself anymore. Mark looked at me for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then, he exhaled sharply, as if he was trying to shake off the weight of everything between us. I don't know if I can do this anymore, Kat. I don't know if I can look past what you did. You betrayed me. You broke my trust. And I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that. Those words cut deeper than anything. I had prepared myself for them. But hearing them from him still hit like a ton of bricks. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to tell him that I was sorry, that I would do anything to make it right, but I knew it wasn't enough. I couldn't erase what I had done. I couldn't undo the damage. The following week was a blur of silence and awkwardness. We moved around each other like strangers in the same house, avoiding eye contact, barely speaking. When we did speak, it was about trivial things. How the dogs were doing, what was for dinner, where we'd left the car keys. But none of it mattered. Not anymore. I knew we were on the edge, hanging by a thread, and neither of us knew how to pull ourselves back together. Then, one evening, as we were sitting at the kitchen table, Mark finally spoke again. I've been thinking, he said quietly, looking down at his hands. And I don't know what the right thing to do is anymore. I could feel my stomach tighten as I waited for him to continue. I think we need some time apart, Mark said, his voice soft but firm. I can't keep pretending everything is okay. I need space to think, to figure out if I can even forgive you. And I think you need time to figure out what you really want, what you've done, and if we even have a chance of fixing this. The words hit me like a slap. Time apart. It wasn't what I had hoped for, but deep down, I knew it was probably the only thing left to do. I had betrayed him in a way that couldn't be fixed overnight, and I wasn't sure if we would ever get back to the way things were. Okay, I whispered, feeling the weight of it all settle on my shoulders. I understand. Mark nodded, but his eyes were distant, like he had already made up his mind. He wasn't angry anymore, at least not in the way he had been. He was just tired. And I was too. We both were. That night, I packed a small bag and went to stay with Emily. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but I knew it was necessary. I needed to give him space, to give myself space to think. But even then, as I sat in Emily's apartment, staring out at the city lights, I couldn't escape the gnawing feeling in my chest. The guilt, the shame, the realization that I had destroyed something beautiful because I couldn't face the truth. I don't know where Mark and I go from here. I don't know if we'll ever be able to rebuild what I've broken, or if we'll both just walk away and never look back. But I do know that I will spend the rest of my life carrying the weight of this mistake. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself